I wanted to ask you first. I want to hear about your journey to where you got to as a doctor and how you changed your mind on several things. But I want to go back to medical school. What would be the most egregious myth that you had been taught and you taught your patients for a long time until you changed your mind?
Well, with regards to nutrition, probably the most egregious was taught to me by my nutrition professor who had a PhD. He was from New Zealand and he was a type 1 diabetic. And he was probably 50 years old at the time. And we mainly in our small, short nutrition class learned about how to feed people intravenously if they'd been in a severe motor vehicle accident or had been in a house fire and had third-degree burns over 90% of their body. That was the majority, but he was a type 1 diabetic. And so he told us at least 10 times during that half semester nutrition class that he ate lots of whole wheat pasta to control his type 1 diabetes. And so I just made a mental note. Okay, so if anybody has diabetes, they need to eat lots of whole wheat pasta. That's how he said it from New Zealand. And that's ridiculous that he was bragging to us as a PhD in nutrition physiology that's he ate lots of whole wheat pasta because he was a type 1 diabetic, implying that that's what every type 1 diabetic and by implication type 2 diabetic should do as well. Just complete ignorance on his part. He meant well. He's a very intelligent guy, but he had no idea what foods someone with diabetes should eat or should not eat.
Tell us about the course of your journey and your career, going out and preaching that message and noticing what you were observing in your patients.
Well, the whole reason I do what I do on social media is trying to make up for past sins. Early in my medical career, I became severely obese and pre-diabetic. And so this entire proper human diet principles came out of me going, hey, I can't be fat and diabetic and then tell people they need to lose a few pounds and tighten up their diet. That's not going to work for me because I'm kind of a common sense guy. And so I just dug into the nutrition research and then later into archaeology, anthropology, paleoanthropology, and completely reversed my severe obesity. I was 297 pounds at my heaviest, and now I hang out at 220. And I carry quite a bit of muscle, so I'm very happy at that weight. My A1C got up to 6.1, very pre-diabetic, and so I got that. It hovers now at 5.4, 5.5, which I'm very happy with. All my other markers are fine. But the reason I do this is because in the first few years of my medical practice, I actually gave people bad nutrition advice, just like my nutrition professor gave me. When somebody was newly diagnosed with either type 1 or type 2 diabetes, I would give them a copy of the American Diabetes Association handout, thinking I was doing good, thinking I was helping this patient. And turns out, if you follow closely the American Diabetes Association diet recommendations and you make all the recipes on their website, it will make your diabetes worse, not better. And so I just kind of learned this one piece at a time as the years went by. And obviously, when I went from being severely obese to being back to normal weight, all of my patients, especially the ones that were obese, were very interested in how I did that, right? This is kind of that social credibility. Like, I know this guy. He used to be big as a house, and now this guy is very fit and very athletic looking. I want to know what he did because I know him. He's not just some figure out there on social media, right? These people knew me. They saw me at church. They saw me at the co-op. They saw me at Walmart. They knew I was a real guy. And so they were very interested. And so I started initially recommending keto and carnivore just to my most severely obese patients, right? Because I still thought it was just a weight loss hack back in 2005, 2006. I'd had no idea how deeply this way of eating reached into human physiology and allowed it to heal and return very close back to optimal, which is kind of everybody's baseline setting. When you're born with the settings to be optimally healthy. And only to the degree to which your parents initially and then yourself later slowly poison yourself with the junk food that is the standard Western diet, that's the degree to which you develop metabolic disease and obesity.
Yeah. And you see it get worse and worse as the generations stack on top of each other, where, when maybe you and I were going to school, there may have been one or two overweight kids, and now it's by far the majority. Like kids playing around, you can just visually see that, how in trouble they are and overweight they are. Tell us about the process of understanding that, yes, this was a weight loss diet. You can knock some pounds off by doing this, and that's great. That's what most people want. But also what you're talking about, like optimization of health. How was it in your experience to see all these other surprising things that everybody talks about? Like, wow, like I did lose the weight and I burned the fat and that was great, but all this other side stuff that I wasn't expecting. Can you tell us what it was like to observe that in your patients?
Yeah, initially, I suspected my patients of blowing smoke because any good doctor knows that if anything good happens to a patient, the doctor gets the credit, and then that doctor saved their life, and then that's the best thing ever, and they love that doctor. And we're actually taught in medical school, don't fall for that. That's very common. Psychiatrists have even an extra level of that, where the patient can actually fall in love with them and think they're the love of their life because they're actually helping them. And so initially I thought, yeah, this is just, people doing that thing that they do when a doctor helps them out. And like initially, if somebody would have severe knee arthritis, right? Bone on bone, having to walk with a cane. And then when they would start this proper human diet, not only would they lose a lot of weight, but that knee arthritis would get so much better that they wouldn't walk with a cane anymore. And in many cases have no pain. And so initially I'm like, well, that's because they lost weight, right? And the knees having to support less of them. And that makes sense. But then I would have people with shoulder arthritis or arthritis in their thumb joint. When they would start a proper human diet, they would lose weight, of course, but their arthritis got better. And you don't have to be a doctor to know that the shoulder joint and the thumb joint are not weight-bearing joints. People, right? Unless you're a monkey, you don't walk on your thumbs or your shoulders. And so there was something else going on here, something in the physiology and the biochemistry. And so that's when I was like, that's weird. Then another episode, I had two women come separately who were perimenopausal or almost postmenopausal. One was 48, one was 51 years of age. And they wanted to do this diet. I said, okay, here you go. And so they both come back for their 6-month checkup, and they're both pregnant, Casey. And the 48-year-old was super happy about that. She had just remarried and they wanted another baby, but she thought it was too late. And then the 51-year-old was not at all happy with Dr. Berry and his diet because she had no intentions of ever having more babies, but yet there you go. And so here's a diet that's decreasing inflammation in non-weight bearing joints and also seemingly increasing the fertility and maybe even reverse aging women back out of menopause, back into a reproductive state hormonally. And I was like, what is going on here? There's got to be more to this than just weight loss, right? So I really went back to the drawing board because back in 2003, I was that doctor that thought if you had ketones in your urine, there was something wrong with you. You were either dehydrated or you had ketoacidosis. There was something terribly, terribly wrong with you. And so I had no idea the therapeutic power of being in ketosis or the therapeutic power of lowering your carbohydrate intake and getting your insulin level back down to a normal level. I was not taught any of that. So I literally had to go back to the drawing board. I had to put back on my student cap and say, okay, I've got to go back and learn the basic physiology and biochemistry and the molecular biology again, because I don't understand how this diet is doing all these things. And that's just two examples, Casey. There are hundreds of different examples with different parts of the body, from the skin to the joints to the gut to mental health. Now we're seeing more and more that it is obvious to any healthcare practitioner, if they listen to their patients and then start reading the research that already exists, and then go back to their physiology and molecular biology textbooks, it should be apparent, like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. But most doctors don't do that. And so they remain ignorant currently. I'd say the majority of doctors in Western society have no idea that having ketones in your urine is a good thing, unless it's for specific pathology that you have those, then that's still a bad thing. But if somebody's healthy and happy and running around in society and they have ketones in the urine, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And the vast majority of doctors don't even check a fasting insulin level. So they have no idea that their patient is severely hyperinsulinemic. And so they're blind to it because they don't know which labs to check. And that's one of the reasons for the book.